Alrighty, guys, welcome again to another night of the Commission Project. Today we are talking about, this is the third episode. The third episode.
Yeah.
Third episode. We're talking about politics, okay? Australian politics, specifically for our young people to get an education and learning, okay? I have with me tonight on the far left.
Left, that's me.
Yep.
Hi guys, it's Wendy once again. Good to be with you guys.
Alrighty. And the guest of honor we have, he's become like a family friend. He's here almost every night now, honestly. It's Andrew Guy, who will be taking us step by step with regards to what politics is, what does it mean, the differences, local, state, federal. And yeah, that's the deal. So tonight.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Johnny, for having me again. It's really exciting, and I really just get this positive energy from you both about just making politics interesting, which is something that a lot of everyday person doesn't think of. But it is actually, we can make politics interesting to talk about. So thank you both.
100%. You're most welcome. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've done some research, guys. After the first few episodes, we've done some research. We've got a few questions that are more specific that we're going to throw to Andrew, and he's going to give us a breakdown. Okay?
Right.
And
so, just before we start, I just want everyone out there to know that I believe it's in November, correct, that we have a state government election.
Yep.
So today we're focusing more on the state government and what they do, so that you guys can get some information from us and then do some of your own research, and hopefully we'll get more people out there voting and, make a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's a very important one. State government elections occur every 4 years. So the last one was in 2022. The next one is later this year, like you've said, Wendy, in November. And we're talking about here about the government that sits in the middle of the federal and our local government. And they play a very important role, actually. I think if there are young people there that are still going to schools, a lot of our public school, most of the public schools are actually run by the state government.
State, okay.
So definitely, if you catch a bus or train to school,
That's
all state government. So a lot of decisions made by this middle government that impact a lot of our lives in many ways.
Okay. Question. The prisons, what's that under?
Definitely state.
The state?
State government.
Okay.
State government. Yep. Juvenile centers, which is where young people that have done mistakes, that's where they get sent to. And that is run by the state government. Yeah.
Gee, was like you gotta. So I suppose, because to be fair, like that touches everybody. Public schools, the corrections system.
Yeah.
I've got a whole list here. The transport. State roads and highways. That touches everyone. So if that's mismanaged or it's run by folks that we didn't elect or that we don't really like or whatever the case is, we lose.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay.
You got to, elect the right people. Like it's something we talk about with the local government.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what level of government it is. We, as the local community, want to make sure that we choose people that have the community at heart.
Yep.
Okay, because you want to make sure you have a safer roads, to drive on. The safer the roads are, the quicker you can get to school. The quicker you can get to the city. All that. You got to also have a good public transport system. And I know a lot of young people, and it should be everyone, are concerned about the impact on environment. Of having so many cars on the road. The only way to reduce that is having good public transport. Give people option to not drive.
Yeah. But can I say something with that, right? So we were in, where were we? We were in Sydney.
Yep.
And in Sydney, public transport, you can tap with your card.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it was the same in Brisbane when we were in Brisbane. So you just tap with your card. There's no need to go get a myki, any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So you just tap with your card and you can travel. And I also, in the news not so long ago, Brisbane's now charging 50 cents for all of their public transport,
Yep.
whether it's the ferries or it's
Right.
bus, trains, whatever. It's 50
Yep.
cents.
Yep.
Now, the other day we went into the city and we thought we'd catch the train.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So because we don't do it very often, it's
Yeah.
like we need to get ourselves a myki, otherwise we can't travel. And
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, like, why other countries around the world, they're using like a token system, or it's just using your Apple, your phone, your whatever.
Yeah.
But for some reason in Victoria, we still are using myki.
Yeah.
Mikey,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where you got to go purchase it from 7-Eleven or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's also the fact that ours, I think it was, how much was it for? It was $12 for the trip.
Yeah.
Yep. Full fare. Yeah.
Full fare.
Yep.
It's quite expensive. So, I just, where was I going with this?
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to say is that when people vote, it makes a change.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I know for a fact in Brisbane, people were not happy with their public transport and all
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And they had to pressure the government into making a change.
Yeah.
And 50-cent fares, like that is ridiculous. And everybody is now on public transport. No one's driving into work, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
It's freeing up the roads.
It's convenient.
There's, less emissions, like all of those good things.
Yeah.
So guys, that's why we get out there.
Yeah. It's a really good point, and I think I almost saw where you're going with this. I think it's like when you go to your friends' houses, you may see something in someone's house like, and then you come back like, Mum and Dad, why can't you get this?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So when we travel, it's very important as citizens to observe what do other states have that we don't have.
Yeah.
And then these are the things to talk to our local MPs about, talk to our, local, government to do more advocacy. Remember last week we talked about local government being our voice.
Yes,
and a lot of those advocacy about public transport and all that, that then sort of strengthen our voice about the things that we need locally. But the thing is, different state government make different budget decisions, on what to spend money on. The state, Victoria being known as the education state, may choose to spend more money on building schools and maybe less in other areas. So maybe that may be the case. And I'm not really here speaking on behalf of the state government of Victoria, but what they did this year is that they made public transport free for children under the age of 18.
Oh, I know that one.
Okay, so if you are under 18 in Victoria, you travel for free. So all you need is just to get a card, which costs just $5, and you travel on tram, buses, and trains to wherever you want to go.
The V-line though, the V-line included.
A V-line included. This is all. This is statewide. So those are some of the incentives that the Victorian government have decided to do. Whereas in Queensland, like you've said, Wendy, is that they made the decision to make that across the board. So and other things, definitely the state government can answer for themselves.
And what I heard today, so in Victoria, Victoria is like the only state where there's these education programs in juvenile facilities for young people. Like that's one of the highlights of the spaces. And I'm guessing that would have been the voters' voice,
of course,
somewhere along the line.
Definitely.
That say, look, we'd like A, B, and C. And I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with any election, like with any, I don't know, election period process, whatever the case is, you never ever get 100% of what you want.
No, you can never. And that's democracy, isn't it? Yeah.
So it's like a compromise.
You
definitely. Get some, and you lose some.
Okay. You just have to have faith in the system that, whoever is elected there will have the community at heart. And a lot of time we may not get the ideal candidate we want. But the thing is, like what you've just said there with having education within the juvenile centers, that may be something that maybe one member of parliament might have that in their heart to make sure we have education for young people when they are in detention so that, they're not being left behind by the mistake they've done. But it also means it's an example of parliamentarian just being flexible in their decision making, but also listening to the community's views as well. So one person may just stand up and say, this is what we need to do, and people will see that this is something that makes sense.
Yeah.
And other members can support it, even though we didn't vote them in for that.
Okay.
But they can see the needs, and someone raise it, and everyone like, okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of voting them in, right?
Yeah.
When we vote, right, most people will see the face of the party.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And usually that's who, as a normal everyday person, that's the person that you go, I kind of like this person. He seems to have some good values or whatever.
Yep.
I'm going to vote for them. Right? So you vote that person in.
Yep.
And then halfway through his term or her term, they then get challenged.
Yeah. Yes.
And we didn't vote the next person.
Yeah.
Right? That comes along. So I think people need to be aware when they're voting, who are they actually voting for?
Yeah, that's a very important point, a very interesting point actually. And it's something more for the federal government.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen a lot at the state government, but we've seen it happening a lot, especially since 2010. It's been happening a lot where someone who is the leader of the party and the prime minister was challenged and successfully challenged and toppled. But the thing is, when you mentioned there about voting them in, the thing is, in Australia, we don't actually vote for the prime minister.
We vote for the party.
We vote for the members of the party.
Okay. Yep.
And this is very important for the state and federal.
Yep.
So we vote for the local members, and then after the elections, the party that have the most members in parliament then get to form the government.
Yep.
So they vote for the man that will become the prime minister.
And then the leader of that party becomes the prime minister. At the federal level, at the state level, become the premier.
Yep.
And maybe let me just throw it out there to the Victorian young people listeners. Do you know who is your current premier in Victoria? We might come back to you later, but have a think about it.
Put it in the comments.
Put in the comment if you know who the premier is in Victoria. Yeah, definitely.
It's not Dan Andrews.
No. He did his part, and someone else is running our state at the moment. So have a think and put in the chat.
I actually know that one. I'm
You do?
Yeah.
Watching the news. That's that. Watching the news. When you get old, that's what happens. Okay. So
wait for the 6 o'clock news.
And I think like with the state government, I think this is.
Hey, come on, Johnny. Just before you go there, I don't think any of you is old. You just want to be a citizen that is politically informed.
Yes, and I want to know.
Yeah.
I don't want to be ignorant.
You know.
I don't want to be ignorant. I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
If I'm paying all this tax and I'm doing all these things, I've got to be, have some kind of voice in it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Definitely.
So with the state government, right? Why I think, especially like when this upcoming election is very important for young people, because I look at the news, I read the newspapers, I look at the news on TV, social media. There's always this hype on youth crime, right? Youth crime, this, youth crime, that. There's this highlight of, I think they're talking about adult crime, adult time.
Yeah.
So I think young people or young adults out there who are eligible to vote, this is a part that genuinely affects you. And I think as young people, we've got to genuinely just make an effort and have a voice in this, because I mean, it touches our lives as young people. Think about it. You want to be able to contribute to the conversation of what happens with young people when they get apprehended by the police. What's the next step when they're in corrections? What's the next step when they're in court? Like, how do we support young people? Like, what things can we do before they get put into facilities? And I think it starts by voting. It starts by understanding the different offers made by the different parties, different values, etc., and how they're relevant and apply to a young person's life. I don't know. Is that a thing?
It is a thing, and maybe let me walk backward to back to your answer as well. The reason why that is so important is that when we look at the state government, it's actually a three-structured level of government. Okay, so there is the parliament, which is in some other state.
All under the state umbrella.
Under the state umbrella. Okay. So in some other states, state parliament will have two houses. So there is what they call the upper house, which is the legislative council. And then there is the lower house, which is the legislative assembly.
Okay.
Okay.
So
sorry, what's the legislative council?
So the Legislative Council, which is the upper house, is sort of act as to scrutinize the laws that are being passed by the government, and the government sits in the lower house.
Okay.
So most of the time, bills are introduced into the lower house.
Okay.
Because the government have the majority and therefore have the higher chances of getting it passed.
Okay. Yep.
And then before it can become a law, it will go up to the upper house, where in most cases the government don't have the majority.
Okay.
So they have to use their negotiation skills to make sure they convince other members who are not from their party to support.
Yep.
And that's where a bill can be scrutinized. It can even be amended.
Okay.
You know, when they say, no, this is not going to have the intended impact. So it then happen like that.
Okay.
So once that is done, so both houses are happy with the bill. It's all passed. It then goes to the governor, the governor of Victoria, which is because we use the UK system, which they call the Westminster system. So we have the governor, and then we have the two houses. So the bill is then signed off. It's a better ceremonial role, the governor. So we'll sign off, and then.
So you're signing on behalf of the king.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And then it become law. And then we're just coming back to your point. You know, it's sort of a long way to come to your answer. The third part. So there is the there is the parliament, which are the two houses, and then there is the executive government, which is where the premier, the cabinet, the departments, which people that work in those departments are the one you hear terms such as public servants. So these are the people that run the departments. So that's the executive government, and then there is the judiciary. Which is where the courts comes in. And the reason I come back to that is that the laws that are passed, such as the adult times, the body that will interpret those laws are the courts.
That's the courts, okay.
Okay. And the courts, we know who work at the courts are the judges. And the judges are appointed by the governor with the advice of the Attorney General of the state.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the government it also would recommend that, I would like Johnny and Wendy to be appointed to the Supreme Court of Victoria. And then the Governor General, in most cases, will sign off. And then would do that. And that's where we have to be very mindful that we're not just voting for one thing. It's your vote could be consequential.
It's a trickle effect,
It's trickle effect. And the thing is, we know, like in the US in the first term, President Trump tried his best to make sure that he was able to appoint as many conservative judges to the Supreme Court. But those are the things people need to be mindful for. That when you vote, you're giving people very, I would say, a lot of powers
100%.
to make a lot of decisions that could impact on you and also on other generations to come.
That's it. You know? And it touches our life. And I think this is where, as young people, we got to just drive that point home, where it touches, like that one vote touches your life. So whether you sit in or you sit out, it's going to affect you one way or the other. And like I'm looking at all of the things that are under the state's government's umbrella. They all affect a young person, especially if they're still trying to build their life. Housing and planning. That's a young person's game. That's, you know what I mean? So, I mean, right now in Australia, in Victoria, there's this big problem with regard to housing, etc. And this is where using our voices when we're voting will make a huge difference.
Big time.
How do you actually decide on, because I always hear it on the news about affordable housing. But I don't get who decides on making those decisions on how to make housing affordable. And where they're actually going to be building and all that kind of stuff.
That's a good question.
I know back in the day when my parents migrated to Australia, right, that you didn't want to be living in Warragul or something. I mean, this is 30 odd years ago. because it was far away from everything, right? So you don't, and usually immigrants coming to the country, they don't have like, they can't buy a car off the bat, all of those kind of things. So obviously, the city areas get higher impact of people. And then obviously Victoria's growing, so now it's spreading out and out. So how are they making those decisions on where to develop? Like, who does the town planning? Is that local government or is it state government?
I think it's important to note that even though we have 3 levels of government, in most cases they have to work together to achieve the best outcome for the overall country.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
So those things is a mixture of that. So the when you talk about the town planning and all that, local government play a big part of that. And I think when you talk about the housing affordability, most part of that is done by the federal government policies. Say you would have heard about the first home buyer grants, which sort of give people a leg into a foot in the door by reducing some charges that maybe may set people back. So the federal government may give people incentive to make it easier for them to make their first home deposit, that then allow them to get into the market. How many houses should be built? Again, this is where the 3 government sort of work together. And the thing is, there are other things the state government can do, but also in partnership with the federal government. Like at the moment, there is, I'm not sure if you would have passed by something called Big Bill or something, Housing Victoria or something like that. It may not have
Big Build.
Something like that. So they're building a lot of apartments across the city and also regionally as well. And those houses will be affordable in a way that some of them may be available for public housing for people that may be homeless or those fleeing family violence, or others may be rented out at the very reduced rent. And that is just, again, to make it easier for people. And those big projects are most of the time in partnership between the federal and state government in terms of the budgets and all that.
So it's more government housing.
Something like that.
That's fair. So question, say a young person, right? Come in the year, young person's voted, the new party is elected, whatever the case is, and they're in power now. What else? So because elections are only every 4 years.
For the state.
For the state.
Every 4 years.
Every 4 years. So in between that, or during that 4-year period, right? What else can a young person do in terms of having their voice heard?
What else can a young person do? Definitely knock on the doors of their local MPs. If they know, where. So if you live in Cranbourne, your local member for Cranbourne, say, is Pauline Richards. It's someone who have the heart of the community, especially with young people. I want her to, drop into her office or just ring up. She would be very interested to meet a young person who wants to advocate for their local community. And I know she visited a lot of schools as well, so I'm sure young people would have seen her. So really talk to your local MP, about what do you think are the needs in the local area. So one thing is, say, in Clyde area, there's some part of that suburb that have better limited network. So there's a lot of black spots there. So these are the things we need to talk to our local MPs about. That the telecommunication, that's more of a federal government. So talk to your federal MP as well, who is Cassandra Fernando. For Holt. So talk to them. Hey, I can't do my homework at home. Things like that. So to get something from a young person voice, it is organic. It's not coming from someone telling them what to say. And people listen to that very sensitively because it's this is a young person genuinely wanting a service that someone in a Western country 2026 should have.
I didn't know that. So I'm assuming you're gonna either make a phone them or email them and make an appointment. And so any average person in the community can make an appointment with their local MP or state representative and go in and obviously talking sense.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
propose or make a request or highlight an issue.
Yep.
Or even compliment.
Yeah. Or yeah, if you're happy with something, you know, like it's. You think about, so you know, in Cranbourne, like we've had some major roads that were a headache about it 10 years ago. You know, think about that roundabout, you know, after you left police and you're heading to Phillip Island.
Yeah.
You know, that roundabout was being fixed. You know, the narrow Warren Cranbourne Road, that was so narrow.
Okay.
If you're happy with something, you know, just write to your local MP.
That
you know,
is so good.
They don't hear a lot of good news of their hard work. So, you know, surprise them.
Okay.
You know,
listening out there, guys.
Yeah, definitely. And that may open the door for your next concern. You know, if you're someone who is appreciative of what's being done, then you want the best for your community. And therefore, your next issue that you raise should be listened to because you want the best for your community.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay.
That's good. I am loving this conversation. But guys, we're going to catch up with you again next week. So you know what to do. Let's like, share, comment. We want to hear what your thoughts are on, you know, what we've been discussing tonight. And also subscribe, set that little ding, 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 ding bell, and for some notifications. So from us to you, we'll see you guys next week. Peace out.
Peace.